After a wild 1-night fling with Xu Yuhan, known affectionately as the Buddhist disciple of the Beijing social circle, I unexpectedly discovered that I was pregnant. After much soul-searching, I made the decision to quietly leave for abroad, where I pursued further studies while giving birth and raising my child all by myself for 3 whole years. 3 years later, having completed my studies and returned home, my former shady friends and acquaintances went out of their way to throw me a welcome-back banquet. At first, it hoped to bury that reckless chapter of my life once and for all and start a peaceful new life. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for me. The door to the private room was thrown open with a bang. Xu Yuhan strode in, radiating an icy aura and brimming with anger. His gaze swept across the room, finally settling on the little curly-haired cutie I was holding in my arms. He froze mid-step, his previously tense expression instantly stiffening. Low and raspy asked, "Whose child is this?" My heart was pounding like a drum, but I forced myself to remain calm and casually replied, "A handsome curly-haired guy from the United States." Deep down, I felt secretly smug. Xu Yuhan's naturally curly hair was identical to the curls hidden beneath Xu Yuhan's seemingly refined exterior. Yet no matter how clever he might be, he'd never have guessed that his own biological father was right there himself. But the next second, Xu Yuhan's face, dark as the bottom of a pot and perpetually cold as an iceberg, suddenly and slowly broke into an utterly incongruous, gentle smile. He reached straight toward the child in my arms, his voice soft to an almost unbelievable degree. "Stop teasing your mom. Come here, let daddy give you a hug." I froze on the spot, hastily pulling the child closer to my chest and snapping back sharply, "Xu Yuhan, don't talk nonsense." I was still putting up a desperate fight, but the little bundle of joy in my arms seemed to understand perfectly. She giggled softly and reached out her chubby little hand toward him, calling out in a clear, baby-like voice, "Daddy." That single word, "Dad," was like a bolt from the blue, sending the entire private compartment into an instant hush. Then chaos erupted in an instant. Friends' exclamations of surprise and teasing remarks rose and fell one after another. All my pretenses, all my secrets crumbled completely at that moment, as I watched Xu Yuhan casually take the child into his arms, cuddling him, kissing him, and laughing joyfully. I felt both furious and utterly embarrassed, but I couldn't utter a single word. Xu Yuhan and I have been neighbors since we were kids. Our two villas are separated by just a single window, truly childhood friends who grew up together. Yet, our relationship has never been gentle or sweet. Instead, from childhood to adulthood, we've been bitter rivals. He was always the other kid's child, as my parents like to put it. His grades always outshone mine. If I managed to get a perfect score, he'd ace the extra credit questions too. And whenever I finally did well on an exam, he'd deliberately sabotage me, publicly announcing my ranking in front of everyone, leaving me to be scolded endlessly by my mom over the phone. It was amid his constant nagging, "Look at Yuhan. He is so much better than you," that I ended up competing with him from elementary school all the way through high school. Since I lost more often than I won, Xu Yuhan firmly cemented his place in my heart as my number -1 arch-rival. After we both went to college, he landed at a top -year 985 university, while I enrolled in an art school. It thought that from then on, our paths would diverge completely, and I'd never again have to endure his dominance. But no, every now and then, he'd show up at my college, not for any other reason but specifically to sabotage my budding romantic prospects. He even had the audacity to sweet-talk me, saying, "Zhang Xiaoqiao, I don't have a girlfriend. And you can forget about bringing your boyfriend in here?" I snapped on the spot and shouted at him, "Xu Yuhan, I may not be able to beat you at anything else, but when it comes to dating, I'm definitely the winner." So on my 20-second birthday, out of sheer spite, I arranged to meet a young male model I'd just met, planning to give myself an unforgettable night as an adult and really rub his nose in it, this Buddha-like guy who always tried to boss me around. But what I never could have imagined was that Xu Yuhan would simply show up right at the door of the private room, casually pull out a bank card, and with just a few words, send the guy packing. I was both furious and drunk, and right there on the spot I threw a tantrum, collapsing into his arms and babbling nonsense. Xu Yuhan. You crazy bastard. If you're already so devoted to vegetarianism and Buddhist prayers that you stay away from women, fine, but why bother ruining my love life for no reason? You owe me that little male model, with those perfectly sculpted 8-pack, ABS and fisherman's lines. Where am I ever going to find another guy like you? I was so drunk that I couldn't even stand straight. Xu sighed in exasperation and could only half-minus support, half-minus hug me into the hotel room. I grabbed at his collar wildly, ripping the buttons off his black shirt until they were scattered everywhere, revealing his sexy collarbones and sharply defined pectoral muscles. Still half-minus conscious, I kept mumbling nonsense, but all I could hear him say in a low voice was, "Fine, il pays en xiao, just don't regret it." After that, everything went hazy, and I completely lost track of time. The next morning, I woke up groggily and the first thing I saw was a beautifully defined set of 8-back ABS. I foolishly thought I'd somehow managed to fall asleep next to the male model I'd been longing for, but I found myself staring straight into Xu Yuhan's cold yet familiar handsome face. I instantly woke up, so scared that I almost lost my soul. I can't even begin to imagine what kind of reaction this man, known throughout the Beijing entertainment circle as the Buddhist disciple, a man who's always been ascetic and detached from worldly desires, would have if, after coming to his senses, he realized I'd slept with him. I hopped into a taxi as fast as I could and headed straight to the airport. Right there, I called my dad and burst into tears, sobbing that I wanted to get out of the country for a bit of peace and quiet. My dad, touched by how lonely I felt on my birthday without anyone to be with me, didn't say a word. He just immediately made all the arrangements for me. I flew across the ocean that very day, and once I went, it was for a full 3 years. Over these 3 years, I discovered I was pregnant, gritted my teeth and gave birth to the child, naming her Juan. While pursuing further studies, I raised our daughter all by myself, living a life that was both busy and peaceful. I changed my phone number, deleted my old WeChat account, and told everyone outside that I was traveling around the world. No one knew exactly where I'd gone, and even fewer people knew that he'd given birth to Xu Yuhan's child. I thought that had long been put behind us, and that Xu Yuhan and I would never cross paths again in this lifetime. Yet at the welcome-home banquet after my return to China, though I'd deliberately not invited him, he still showed up, furious and full of anger. At first glance, his eyes locked onto the little curly-haired baby nestled in my arms. After the farce of the welcome banquet ended, I handed Juan over to the nanny to take home first, while Xu Yuhan held me tightly in his grip, making it impossible for me to leave at all. Sen Xiaoxiao, you dare to do it, but can't take responsibility for it. You've been hiding so carefully these past 3 years. Xu Yuhan bit his teeth, his eyes filled with both anger and pain. I nervously averted my gaze and, summoning all my courage, tried to defend myself. I just went abroad for a few years. There's nothing to hide. Just went abroad, he pressed relentlessly, cornering me against the wall of the private compartment. So who exactly cowed and told back that night? Pressed into a corner with no way out, I had no choice but to hang my head and admit defeat. I cowed myself. Okay, I'm sorry. Then, quick as a flash, I stepped up again, trying to distance myself from the situation. Don't worry, I won't bother you once I'm back. I heard you and Xu are getting engaged. Go ahead and get engaged. You don't have to carry any burden at all. Engagement? What engagement? Xu Yuhan's brow suddenly tightened, his face full of confusion. Just as I was about to continue speaking, his phone suddenly rang. He briefly replied to the call, then hung up and immediately took my hand, leading me out of the room. Boy, I struggled desperately. He'll take you to meet Xu. Are you out of your mind? What would I be doing going to see your fiancé? I said, both anxious and furious. I didn't exactly break your vow on purpose, did I? It was consensual between us. Why on earth should I apologize? Xu Yuhan uncurled his thin lips into a smirk, his tone laced with teasing. It's not an apology, just help her pick out a wedding dress. I was so furious I almost cursed, but he kept dragging me forcefully all the way to the wedding dress shop. It wasn't until that figure, with its back turned to us, turned around and called out warmly, brother, and I finally froze in utter disbelief. Xiao Xiao, I'm Juya, Yuhan's own younger sister. My boyfriend's in the military, and with all the wedding preparations going on, he asked my brother to help out. Those rumors floating around out there are all just misunderstandings. Zhu's eyes sparkled with excitement as she gave me a curious, gossip-filled look. My brother's been talking about you for years now. He definitely is white moonlight. The one he loves but can't have. The one whose absence has left him longing and sick with yearning. I froze in place, completely dazed. It turned out that the so-called engagement was nothing but a vicious rumor spread by word of mouth. Because of this damn rumor, he'd returned home feeling guilty, and as soon as I stepped through the door, I was caught red-handed by Xu Yuhan. Xu Ya was incredibly enthusiastic and insisted on trying on wedding dresses with me, euphemistically claiming, "It's more efficient when two people try them together." Xu Yuhan's gaze remained fixed on me the entire time, picking apart every detail of my wedding dress. Now he'd say the skirt was too puffy, then claim the style didn't suit me. Clearly he was just deliberately teasing me. In a fit of anger, I asked Juya to find me a piece of clothing that was daring enough. As soon as I stepped onto the stage, Xu Yuhan immediately clapped his hand over his nose and rushed awkwardly into the restroom. Juya gave me a thumbs up and said, "Sister Zhao Xiao, you're the only one in the whole world who can ever tame my brother." After helping Juya pick out her wedding dress, it was already late in the evening. We walked side by side through the familiar villa district. The streetlights cast long shadows, reminding me so vividly of countless nights from my childhood when we'd walk home together. Xu Yuan suddenly spoke up. "Zhao Xiao, do you remember when we were kids? Your parents were abroad for long periods, and you'd be scared being all by yourself at home every day. You'd run over to my place to sleep." My heart softened. During that time, our housekeeper suddenly quit, leaving me all alone in the huge villa. At night, it was so dark and dreary that I didn't even dare to go to the bathroom. One evening, I was lying by the window, crying, when Xu Yuhan whistled and called out to me, pretending he was watching a horror movie and asking me if I dared to come join him for company. I was absolutely terrified, yet I still mustered up the courage to rush over to his place. The two of us huddled on the sofa, watching horror movies all night long. We were both so scared that we didn't dare go back to our own rooms and ended up squeezing together on the sofa for the rest of the night. Now that I think about it, he'd actually been deliberately teasing me just to keep me company and prevent me from being alone in my fear. "Xu Yuhan, you've been putting on an act all along." I laughed at him. "You're the one who's just scared to look yourself. Yet you drag me along just to give yourself courage." He suddenly lowered his head, his warm breath brushing against my ear as his voice dropped to a deep, tantalizing tone. "No one's home tonight. You dare come over again?" My ears instantly turned red with embarrassment, and I spat out to get lost, before turning around and dashing home. But as soon as I reached my room, I felt something in the pocket of my windbreaker phone had somehow slipped in there. The screen lit up, and there was a WeChat message from him. "I don't regret it." My heart surged with warmth, and I could no longer hold back. Wearing slippers, I rushed out and pounced on him from behind. But this time, I didn't manage to leap onto his back. Xu Yuhan calmly turned around and pulled me into his arms in one swift motion. Before I could even speak, his kiss came down heavily. His lips were soft, his breath hot. All my resistance and stubbornness crumbled completely in that single kiss. "Xu Yuhan, after all these years, have you ever really liked me?" I buried my face in his chest, my voice choked with emotion. "I did. More than you could ever imagine. I've always loved you." He held me close and walked slowly into the living room, his voice so gentle it almost seemed unreal. "I was just afraid of scaring you away. Afraid that it'd end up losing even our friendship. You're such a coward. I cried and laughed at the same time, hooking my arms around his neck and refusing to let go. Do you know? I've been waiting for you to say this, waiting for years. He gently kissed away my tears, repeating again and again. I'm sorry. All those youthful stubbornness, words that didn't match our true feelings, silent acts of devotion, and unspoken crushes, all of it finally found its home in this moment. The next day when I woke up, I was already in Xu Yuhan's bedroom. Lying on my phone was a message he'd sent saying there was something urgent at the company and that he'd be back soon. As I read his message, a smile crept onto my lips, and my heart felt sweetly overwhelmed. I came home fully dressed, and as soon as I stepped through the door, I heard a lively buzz coming from the living room. My parents had already rushed back from overseas and were endlessly teasing Xuan. And on the sofa sat a handsome foreign guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, Peter. He was my student when I was studying abroad, and he fell in love with me at first sight. This time he even followed me all the way to China, eager to make things official. Pursue me. My parents are extremely pleased with him. They think he comes from a well-off family and is kind and gentle, and have been constantly urging me to seize this opportunity. But deep down, my heart has already been completely filled up by Xu Yuhan. I called Peter into the yard and firmly refused. I've already found the person I love. There's no way it could work. Peter looked utterly dejected and pressed me, asking who that person was. Just then, a deep, familiar voice rang out. It's me. Xu Yuhan had somehow appeared standing across the lawn, his gaze firm and his presence calm and composed. Xuan wobbled out, and when she saw two men simultaneously holding out their arms toward her, each wearing an expression of tender affection, she froze in place, her little head darting from side to side, unsure of whom to rush into first. I quickly picked up the child and introduced him awkwardly. Peter, this is Xu Yuhan, the real dad of Xuan. Xu Yuhan calmly took Xuan's arms, glanced at Peter, and said with an open and serious tone, "Thanks for taking care of them, mother and daughter. But she's always been my white moonlight. There's never been a chance for you." Peter gave a relieved smile, calmly accepting the outcome. The next day, he packed his bags and set off to experience China's breathtaking landscapes. I took Xu Yuhan to meet my parents officially. My mom shot me a sidelong glance, then smiled and pulled him close. You finally found the courage to say it. My dad, holding Xuan in his arms, spoke slowly and deliberately. When you first went abroad, Xu Yuhan called me countless times, roundabout inquiries about your whereabouts. He was worried that your mood might be upset during pregnancy, so he never dared to tell you. What already guessed who Xuan's father was. We were just waiting for you to come clean on your own. I looked at my daughter, who was smiling happily in my arms, then glanced over at Xu Yuhan, whose eyes were filled with tenderness. Suddenly, I realized that our hasty escape all those years ago had been nothing more than a test fate had set before us. That aloof, self-possessed Buddhist disciple from the Beijing social circle, so detached and uninterested in women, finally stirred. My worldly heart remained true to his own sincerity. All those missed moments, the love kept hidden, the feigned rivalry born of conflicting feelings, all of it has now transformed into the most tranquil kind of happiness. For the rest of our lives, through every meal and every season, as long as our family stays by each other's side, we'll never part again.